Today, I want to talk about some books that get banned in, let's say, a very specific setting. No, not your local library or your school, the prison. Now, you might not be surprised to know that the prison system is where most books get banned. And look, honestly, for a lot of them, there are some good reasons. For example, a guide to improvised weaponry. Yeah, I think that's probably better off not being allowed. The guide to hacking with Kali Linux, I could see how that might pose a cybersecurity threat. But today, actually, I want to just highlight how ridiculous some of these bans can get. I've gone over some really heavy topics in the first couple of videos, so let's lighten it up a little bit. Now, of course, censorship is never a light topic, but it's kind of absurd to see just how far some of these censors can go and just how ridiculous some of these titles are. So once you see the books that I'm going to talk about, you'll see what I mean. You can actually find this data. It's publicly available. You can see exactly which books are banned by each state. Some states don't give that information out, and some are, of course, worse than others. Leading the way, as always, is Texas and Florida. I looked into the Texas database, seeing as how that's where I currently reside. Now, in just the state of Texas alone, if you look on this database, there are 940 pages of titles, and each one comes with 10 books. So do the math, you're talking close to 10,000 books that have been not allowed for inmates to read. And granted, some of them very good reasons, and some of them are just absurd. I want to point out the most ridiculous today. The three of the most commonly banned titles in the prison system: The Art of War by Sun Tzu. A lot of you are familiar with that, and you can probably imagine why that's not something they would want prisoners to read. The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene, which is a very interesting book that not everybody is familiar with. I'll actually talk about that more at the end. According to PEN America, a report that they have done, the most banned title across states that give that information out: Prison Ramen. That's right, it's a cookbook full of ramen recipes collected by inmates, and actually has some celebrities who give their recipes as well. Actors like Danny Trejo, Shia LaBeouf, Slash from Guns N' Roses, and the foreword of this book was done by Samuel L. Jackson. Now, if you're wondering if this is like code for something, no, this is actually a recipe book for ramen and how to make it with ingredients that you might get in the prison system. Why is this book so frequently banned? Your guess is as good as mine. Seriously, there's nothing nefarious about this. There's no hidden ways on how to make a weapon out of a ramen noodle. There's nothing crazy like this. But really, this goes to the larger point of why are they restricting books that have nothing obvious to do with a security risk. And this goes more to the cultural aspect of it, is maybe just not wanting anything that involves prisoners sharing what it's like behind the pen, and just any sense of community, camaraderie. But overall, you got to admit, it's pretty ridiculous. And while I don't plan on being behind bars anytime soon, and hopefully that doesn't happen, I'll be honest, I'm actually interested in this book, and I love a good ramen, so I might want to see what it's all about. All right, but you think that's absurd? Oh no, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Prison Ramen is one of the most banned. How about some other titles? I actually went through and called the Texas database here. According to the Marshall Project, they have it online. You can check it out yourself. These are actual titles that have been banned from prisons. For some of these, let's just play along and see if you can guess what the reason is. In no particular order, let's start with Beekeeping for Dummies. That's right, if you're worried that your inmate might want to suddenly start taking up beekeeping as a hobby, well, don't worry anymore. They won't figure out how to do it. You've probably already asked yourself, what possible reason could beekeeping for dummies be banned in prisons? The answer is, apparently on one of these pages, there's a way that you could possibly figure out how to make alcohol of some sort. I don't know. I actually considered buying some of these books to look into it, and then I decided not to spend my $20 on Beekeeping for Dummies. All right, now the next one is actually a book I did read. I did the audiobook here. I didn't actually read it per se, but audiobook still counts, right? So this is actually a funny one. If you're familiar with Amy Schumer, her book, The Girl with the Lower Back Tattoo. Now, even if you don't know this book or you don't know Amy Schumer or like her, you have to admit that's actually one of the funniest titles of any book ever. For those who don't know what this is about, there's actually a book that became a movie. It was called The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and Amy kind of personalized it. I listened to the audiobook because there's a version of her reading it herself, and anytime you get the author herself to read the book, and she's just hilarious. I think she's hilarious. Maybe not everybody does, but whatever. It's a hilarious book, and you know what her material is all about. There's some sexually explicit content in there, but it's all a joke. It's all supposed to be funny, and yet not funny for the prison system. Also, way too far. How about Woodstock? 3 days of peace, love, and music. That's right. You wouldn't want the inmates to get all riled up on peace and hippie stuff. Now, the reason stated for this one is not surprisingly, somewhere in one of these pages, there's a picture of someone who's apparently nude. It's Woodstock. That's what happens. But really, is looking at a picture, a grainy image from the 60s, it's probably black and white, of someone who happens to be nude at a concert. That's really going to pose a threat to the security of our nation? Well, not as much as our next title, Modern Calligraphy. So maybe the thought here is the pen is mightier than the sword, and if you're writing calligraphy, it's like 10 times damage. Again, I really considered buying this book just to see what image on what page made someone look at this and say, yeah, we can't have them reading this. Next up, a book that I have no interest in reading and should be banned, I think, for other reasons. The Southern Living Garden Book. I say that just because I hate garden stuff. Now, actually, I'll give you a few seconds to consider the security risk that Southern Living might bring. Got it yet? Well, apparently, somewhere in here, aside from how to plant your gardenias or whatever those are, I don't know. Apparently, there's a map somewhere of the state of Texas, and this is apparently a security risk. It's the exact same reason that biography of Buddy Holly is also banned. Map of Texas. I mean, look, if you have a map, then that's all it takes to break out. And by the way, you think I'm kidding or exaggerating about any of this, please check the link. I promise you I'm not. I'd love to see your guesses on this one because I have no idea, honestly. But apparently forbidden to prisoners, pressure washing 101. It lists, quote unquote, security concerns on pages 80 and 89. This really piques my imagination. I can only try to fathom what security concern could possibly be embedded in this guide to commercial pressure washing. I don't even know which book this is talking about because I tried to look it up and I can't find which pressure washing guide. Apparently there's more than one. It's a thing. And I guess if you think about it, a pressure washer could be kind of an aggressive tool if used improperly. But if you're really that worried, maybe just don't give them pressure washers. And then if you really want to keep your prison safe, you can't let your inmates read the basic practices of the Universal Healing Tao. Well, apparently one of these practices has to do with enhancing the libido, something along those lines. You get the idea. Now, I could go on and on and on, trust me, but you get the idea here, and it's just frankly absurd. And there really is no rhyme or reason. Honestly, they'll state a reason why something is banned or forbidden, but honestly, that's only for the ones they bother to even do this with. According to a PEN America report, I mean, books are just basically thrown away arbitrarily, not by someone who actually reads them or has any expertise whatsoever in the field. It's just somebody in the mailroom who takes a glance and decides if it's good or not. Needless to say, I and many others don't support censorship and banning books in any form. There are, of course, some exceptions, as the one I mentioned at the very beginning. If it's an obvious, clear, common sense security risk, sure. But this just goes way too far, and really, there almost are no real guidelines to this. As the author of 48 Laws of Power, Robert Greene, has said, this is basically a form of control. It's the ultimate form of power of manipulation. So the hypocrisy of saying, this is a book that's dangerous for you, whereas they, the prisons, are the ones that are completely controlling the dynamic and giving you access to only certain amounts of information is very frightening. That's how totalitarian systems operate. Sometimes the absurdity of these situations just makes it so that you have to laugh. I mean, some of these things are just so ridiculous, but at the same time, it's also a very sad situation that we see ourselves in, that it's just getting worse, and not just in prisons, but censorship all over our country. I hope you enjoyed that list of some banned books in prison that are just absolutely ridiculous. I'm going to cover banned books from a whole wide array of topics, so please consider subscribing.